Hello guys, welcome to the movie recap review. Happy watching.
The film opens in a post-apocalyptic setting where a small enclave thrives amidst desolation, a glass structure standing at the center. A stern warning sign prohibits trespassing. Despite this, a lone scavenger attempts entry, met with fatal consequences. B, accompanied by her sister Evie, and B's daughter, Daisy, scavenges from the fallen. Donning protective masks against the toxic atmosphere, they harvest the organs before burying the deceased. Meanwhile, inside the enclave, the siblings' brother Gabe awaits their return, oblivious to the necessity of protective gear. The girls caution him to keep his distance. It's revealed that Gabe suffers from memory loss due to the toxic shred outside, rendering him vulnerable to its effects. The family refers to those outside as the Forgetters. Gabe, having been exposed to the shred from a young age, struggles with even basic tasks like reading and nighttime bathroom use. Their mother, the caretaker of the group, lays down strict guidelines for dealing with outsiders who dare to trespass. Daisy, B's daughter, yearns to glimpse an animal, sharing her hope that her missing uncle, Luca, might return one day with tales from beyond their sanctuary. The family conducts ritualistic ceremonies to nurture their plants and trees, ensuring a vital supply of clean oxygen. Each trespasser's organs are buried as a sacrifice to the soil, fostering growth for the next day. B, vigilant with her rifle, spots yet another stranger approaching. He collapses, removing his gas mask in the process. Despite her sister Evie's warnings against breaking the rules, B brings the unconscious man into their glass haven, driven by the hope that he may hold information about Luca. Their mother, initially furious at the breach of protocol, begrudgingly agrees to aid the stranger once he's inside, recognizing the urgency of his condition. She instructs the young girls in wound care while tending to the stranger's injured leg. Afterwards, the mother secures both Gabe and the stranger's ankles. The next morning, Gabe has peed in bed and is visibly frightened. The girls wake up and take care of the mess. B makes disparaging remarks about having to clean up after Gabe yet again. Evie chooses to stay and assist in cleaning her brother. They also tend to the stranger's wounds until B becomes uneasy. She instructs Evie to fetch water while she remains to trim the stranger's beard, despite his feigned unconsciousness. When the stranger opens his eyes, B warns him against any mischief. The family convenes as the mother questions the stranger, who struggles to recall his own name. He admits to traveling from the eastern city, but insists there's nowhere like their current location. When he inquires about leaving, the mother expresses concern that he might forget their hospitality and pose a risk to them. Thus, he'll stay and contribute like the others. Curious, Daisy asks if he's encountered kangaroos or sheep, to which he replies that any kangaroo would be famished, as their vicinity boasts the only greenery for miles around. Instructed by her mother, Daisy takes Gabe to put a warning sign for potential trespassers, utilizing the remains of the previous intruder as a stark reminder. B attends to the stranger, offering him a selection of their homegrown produce to choose from. Returning to her sister, Evie finds B employing various tactics to persuade her to leave, seeking privacy with the stranger. Later, Evie cautions her sister against placing too much trust in the stranger too quickly, but B insists she already feels she knows him well enough. Daisy engages the stranger in another conversation, discussing their favorite animals and even showing him what a horse looks like. Intrigued, he offers to carve one for her with a knife if she can procure one for him. Quickly, Daisy sneaks into the garden and pilfers a knife from her sister's basket without their notice. The stranger carves the horse in secret, but Gabe catches sight of him. He demonstrates how the pieces fit together and encourages Gabe to try. But Gabe struggles with the task, becoming visibly upset. He erupts into a frenzy, destroying everything in his vicinity, prompting the family to rush in and attempt to pacify him. Despite their efforts, Gabe spirals further, accidentally striking B in the chaos. Reacting swiftly, Daisy releases the chains restraining the stranger's ankle, allowing him to assist in restraining Gabe. After a tense struggle, they manage to calm Gabe and defuse the situation. The mother decides to grant the stranger freedom of movement. Later that night, the stranger joins B by the mirror. She mistakenly calls him Luca, but he corrects her, stating he can't be Luca as he doesn't share the same familial bond with her. B insists this revelation confirms his identity as Luca. The following day, while working in the garden with Bee and Daisy, the stranger heads to the seed shed to retrieve a brush and encounters Evie inside. He attempts to engage her in friendly conversation, asking about her memory box and a game she used to play with her brother Luca. However, Evie's distrust of the stranger surfaces, compounded by her anger at feeling sidelined by his presence around Bee and Daisy. The mother confronts the stranger, reminding him that everyone has a role within the family dynamic. She subtly suggests that perhaps his role could involve impregnating Bee. Later, Bee and the stranger are on guard duty when Bee notices someone approaching. She prepares to shoot, but the stranger's distractions delay her only momentarily. Despite his interference, Bee takes the shot, killing the trespasser, whose body the girls later dispose of. Evie enters the garden and witnesses Bee and the stranger in a passionate embrace. Memories flood back to her, reminding her of a similar scene involving her brother Luca instead of the stranger. Overwhelmed, she flees, but not before the stranger catches sight of her. Returning to her gardening duties, Evie is confronted by the stranger, who confronts her about witnessing their encounter. She reacts defensively, hurling a tool at him and accusing him of manipulating Bee's emotions. She warns him to cease his manipulations, emphasizing that Bee's fragile state of mind cannot withstand further deception. The stranger settles down and unearths Evie's buried memory box, discovering Luca's letter necklace inside, which he pockets. Later, during the family's daily ritual, Evie interrupts, asserting that the sanctity of the ritual is compromised by the stranger's presence. Bee argues back, accusing Evie of disrupting the ritual herself. The stranger, a master manipulator, reveals Luca's necklace, claiming he always safeguarded it. Evie condemns him for exploiting their memories, particularly affecting Bee. Daisy interjects, suggesting they allow the stranger to assume the role of Luca, but Evie insists they confront reality, warning that their fantasy will lead to their demise. Finally, the mother speaks up, expressing disappointment in Bee's inability to resist her feelings for Luca. Bee retaliates, blaming Evie for past transgressions, accusing her of neglecting Gabe, leading to his exposure to danger. Evie storms out of the room and later seeks solace in her mother's bedroom. There, she expresses her frustration, feeling alone in her quest for truth. Her mother reassures her, urging Evie to trust her, emphasizing her commitment to the family's safety. She predicts that once the child is born, Luca will be gone as it always has. Meanwhile, Gabe lies awake, uncomfortably aware of the creaking sounds emanating from the bed above, where Bee engages in a night workout with the imposter pretending to be Luca. These sounds disturb Evie and even reach her mother in the adjacent room. Daisy inquires about the noise, to which the mother cryptically replies, "It's the natural rhythm of things." Bee visits her mother one day, receiving a stark warning about the dangers posed by the shred. Her mother emphasizes the importance of Bee's safety, particularly for the sake of the baby she carries. She explains that while the surrounding foliage provides them with fresh air, sacrifices must be made. The plants struggle to produce enough oxygen to sustain everyone, including the developing lungs of Bee's unborn child. Her mother admonishes her, stating that the time for indulgence has passed. She must now decide between the illusion of Luca and the well-being of her impending newborn. Overwhelmed, Bee screams in anguish, triggering Gabe to flee outside in fear, devoid of protective gear. The imposter posing as Luca comes to Evie's aid, rescuing Gabe and bringing him back inside to safety. Bee approaches fake Luca, informing him they have sentry duty together. She confides in him, revealing her mother's plan to dismiss Luca once the baby arrives. Determined to defy this fate, Bee proposes they flee together. Meanwhile, Gabe climbs Evie's bed and tries to comfort himself. Awakened by his actions, Evie halts him, but offering some comfort nonetheless. Later, while Gabe and the stranger toil away indoors, the stranger maliciously insinuates to Gabe that Evie's fondness for him stems from pity, triggering Gabe to hurl a wood, inadvertently shattering a window. Swiftly addressing the breach, they prevent any significant damage. However, the stranger, now seated with the mother, expresses concern about Gabe's burgeoning threat and suggests his relocation outside, proposing that a forthcoming child could fill his role. Despite the stranger's plea, the mother knows better than he expected, resolutely insists on his departure. The stranger then approaches the bath where the girls are showering together. Bee invites him to stay, emphasizing their familial bond. Politely declining, saying it's his time for sentry duty. Subsequently, he confronts the mother directly, gripping her throat as she calls him an actor and that he hasn't seen who else is pretending. As she slips into unconsciousness, he strikes her on the head, causing her demise. Positioning her lifeless body beside Gabe, he frees him from his bonds, staging the scene to incriminate Gabe. Gabe erupts in fury at the stranger, just as the girls awaken and rush into the room, discovering their mother's lifeless form, with all signs pointing to Gabe as the culprit. Meanwhile, in the adjacent room, as the girls grieve over their loss, the stranger restrains Gabe once more and opens the window. Finally, he reveals to Gabe his own tragic past, witnessing his family get exposed to the toxin, prompting him to discard his mask and try to forget, only to realize he was immune to its effects. Observing Gabe gradually calming down and seemingly forgetting the events, he shuts the window. Meanwhile, Bee gazes at the memory box nestled in the corner of the room, triggering a sudden rush of recollections from her time on sentry duty. On one particular day, she had spotted an intruder and, uncertain if it was Luca, she signaled for identification. Yet, when the figure made a move, she reacted swiftly, ending his life with a fatal shot. Only later did she realize the devastating truth. The person she had killed was indeed Luca, innocently attempting to signal back with his flashlight. Overwhelmed with grief and fury, Bee removed her mask and laid him to rest outside, a secret she now unearths as she confronts his remains in the present. It emerges that Evie had been aware of Bee's deed all along, concealing the truth and perpetuating the belief that Luca remained alive. In the throes of grief, Bee longs to escape and erase the pain, but Evie intervenes, joined by the stranger in restraining Bee. Despite Evie's efforts, Bee ultimately slips away, the stranger urging Evie to release her. Returning to Gabe, they find him devoid of memory or response. Bee reemerges seemingly unaffected of the events, prompting Evie to lament the encroaching oblivion, fearing she'll be the sole bearer of recollection. Yet the stranger offers reassurance, promising not to forget. In a tender gesture, he cradles Evie, and together they surrender to forgetfulness momentarily. Elsewhere, Bee urges Daisy to discard her mask, allowing Evie to guide their shared memories, echoing her mother's legacy. Stepping into her mother's role, Evie carries out the ritual, determined to preserve their heritage. As time passes, it becomes apparent that Gabe, like Bee, roams maskless and unaware. Meanwhile, Bee carries a child for a few months now. In the final scene, Gabe unearths 2 skeletons adorned with Bee and Evie's necklaces, revealing the mother's practice of preserving the identities of those who came before. On guard duty, the stranger spots an intruder approaching. Initially poised to defend, he ultimately chooses to end Gabe's tormented existence, clearing the way for the newcomer's arrival.
And that's the end of the story. I hope you liked it. Comment down below what movies do you like us to recap next. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time.